Okay, we left off on Yudches Amar Aleph. Yudches Amar Aleph, middle Tosas. Tosas is a phenomenal question. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that the reason why you insert a date in the get is Shlichapa Basachoso, because the uncle would write a get for his niece to protect her from the death penalty, because otherwise she could present the get and say that she committed adultery, or this illicit relationship wasn't adultery because it happened after she received the get, but now that there's a date, she can't do that. So it says, what about today? There's no death penalty. So if that's the case, why, if a get today does not have a date, why is it not a valid get? Right? If the date is purely for the sake of what? To find her guilty, to punish her with the death penalty. If you told man diyoma mishum basachoso, bizman hazeh lo makosin zman begitten. That filu bizman hazeh mashma, the boy's man, seems to be even today. If a get does not have a date, it's not valid. According to Rabbi Yochanan, why is it not valid? It's nan. Gitten psulim. It says gimel gitten psulim. Right? It says the 3 gitten that are psulim, so that's the halacha, even today. What about the legitimacy? To determine the legitimacy of the children. You see, it's a little difficult this answer, because Tosas asked the question before. The Gemara says that why does Rish Lakish not accept the position of Rabbi Yochanan? He says because Znusish lo shchiach. So Tosas shows from elsewhere. It doesn't mean it's lo shchiach. It happens. It happens enough to be concerned about it. But in terms of to be able to put a person to death, where you meet all the criteria that she was forewarned, that's lo shchiach. But in terms of women becoming an adulteress, that she shouldn't be permitted to the husband, that's not that remote. It happens enough that we have to address it. So if that's the case, say what about Bonei Mamzerim? Right? So you have to say, this is similar to what Tosas says in Avodah Zorah. It says that if a non-Jew touches the wine of a Jew, you're not permitted to drink the wine. And to what degree is it not permitted? Even Osabano, you're not even permitted to benefit from it. So the Gemara says there's a linkage between Yenom is Mishum B'Noseim. It's because wine is a social beverage. So to prevent assimilation, but why is it Osabano? So it's linked to Avodah Zorah. It's also. I mean, once you do one, you take it all the way. But if it would not be B'Noseim, we wouldn't have gone in that direction. It's same thing here. Initially, why did they enact that you have to have a date in a get? Because of znus. What does it mean to put it to death? Because the uncle would provide the document to protect it from the death penalty. Rabbi Shloka says, but it's something which is remote, that you should be able to put it to death because you have to meet all the criteria. So now we say, Rabbi Yochanan says it's not that remote. So what about today? Today there's no death penalty. Once it was enacted, why wasn't it rescinded? Because it has value to determine boneh mamzer and not mamzer. Right? It's the only way to understand it. Otherwise, why continue with the date in the get?
Don't we have other issues that we carry on from the time of the Gemara, even though they have no relevance today? Are there like other things that we feel like medicine? You can't take medicine because we're ready to grind it up.
It's still possible, certainly. That has a relevance even today. No, that the Gemara says explicitly because even though no, the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says that even though Yadin B'Kvida Yach, we know the mathematical calculation, how to figure out exactly when it is in terms of Rosh Chodesh, but it may be forgotten. If we go into Golus, it may be forgotten how to do that mathematical calculation, so it's a problem. That's the reason why. Okay, so that's continuous, that problem. It's an issue. I mean, Jews were in concentration camps. They didn't have calendars. So they lost the track of time. But they were always off a day or so. They didn't know exactly which day it was. Okay? But no, it is correct what you're saying. I mean, for instance, the Mishnah says you're not permitted to clap and dance on Yom Tif. Shem Yisad Klishir. Because you may, right? So it's a machloek rishonim today. Are you permitted? Are you permitted? Because today people are not adept or capable of creating that musical instrument. So maybe, but it's not so simple. What about if you have a string instrument and you tighten the strings, a violin or a guitar, so it plays better. It's makah b'patish. So this is the raisa. You're not permitted. To tune a piano is one thing. So you say, well, a piano you could play, another instrument you can't play. We don't differentiate musical instruments and musical instruments. If we permit one, it'll come to shemisan klishir. Doesn't mean fashioning initially, but there are other things. Tosas and Beis speaks about a case about, the Gemara says you're not supposed to drink water where there's snakes, because they may have drunk from the water, so it's a question, it's called mayim magulim, right? Exposed, and if the snake drank of it, it leaves some of its venom, and when you drink the water, you could be affected. So it's a question of pikuach nefesh. Are you permitted? So it says, what about today that the locations which once had snakes no longer have snakes? Does it remain in place? Right? It's a question. It's machlok shushonim, because again, the Gemara says once it's enacted, if they don't rescind it, the halacha remains in place. Or initially it was only legislated only if the circumstance was there. If the circumstance should change, then it's not. Tosas throughout Shas speaks about this. We had a machlokas, we had a Tosas in Avodah Zorah. It says initially, when they legislated Yenom, they said Shamnom, even the oil of a non-Jew. Olive oil was similar to wine of a Jew. Avrami, I want you to hear this, right? Bertolli olive oil, right? Even if it has a hechsher, means there's no non-kosher ingredients. So you're permitted to use olive oil of a goy that's manufactured or squeezed by a non-Jew, or a non-Jew touches olive oil. Also, because it's a staple. Olive oil was a staple.
I can understand wine, because wine you get it all drunk, you become like the goy.
No, it's mishum b'noseim, not to get drunk. It's a social, it's an association. So they bake you. Also, oil was in the Mediterranean diet. That was oil, olive oils was a basic ingredient.
It says about flour.
I'm just telling you. So Gemara says it was exertion. It was exertion that they weren't able to. It was too difficult for them. So there's a question: did they rescind it, or it was annulled? It naturally was annulled. They didn't have to rescind it, since it was a misevaluation. So it never took effect. It was never. Then they had other. Well, they also had other intoxicating beverages. Right. But wine is even today. Wine has a certain status. No, wine has a status. It's like it's more prestigious wine. You want a good glass of scotch. That's something else. The wine is more prestigious wine than whiskey.
Some of these didn't they stem from what happened in the temple practice? So wine was used for the libations. Olive oil was used in the lighting. The whole story of Hanukkah with the olive oil, the seal on the olive oil.
No, that's it. So they should not contaminate it. It should not be contaminated. To know if somebody touched it or not. So the seal was broken. We suspect somebody had touched it. So the Greeks intentionally, they broke the seals to contaminate the olive oil, knowing that we would not use it.
So at some level, the hechsher is like a seal. It's like if it says this hasn't been tempered. I mean, the same thing with wine.
If a non-Jew touches the bread of a Jew, the Jew could eat the bread. But if he would initially touch our olive oil, we weren't permitted the olive oil. We weren't permitted to use the olive oil. Olive oil was exactly like wine. It was exer she'ein hatziv yochel lamod bo. It was a decree that the tzibur wasn't able to deal with it. It was just too much for them.
So there was a decree.
It stems from
Initially, it was a decree.
But it stems from this
No, it says the same thing. Mishum b'noseim. It's all again because of assimilation. It started with assimilation.
touching.
No, to take it the nth degree.
The touching, I thought, was always tempered because of the idolatrous practices and not to contaminate us and so forth. Oil and wine share something in common.
So what about flour? He asked, what about flour? Flour, wheat flour was also, that's the mincha, is made of wheat flour. Okay.
All these items
Okay, I'm just mentioning all that in terms of Tosas. Initially, Reish Lakish rejected it because he says it's remote. You put be able to meet all the prerequisites to put a person to death. What about Mamzerim? That has a great relevance. Are the children legitimate or illegitimate? Inami, wine. Gemara. This is the Gemara. Inami, Meheri Bar Beis Hamikdash. Here, even though today the death penalty is not relevant, Meheri Bar Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash could be built instantaneously. No. Again, to determine are the children legitimate. If she was if she conceives, then the children are illegitimate, right? So the date will be the determining factor. Yibona Beis Hamikdash. No, this famous question, which is asked. The halacha is we have 6 Ori Miklot, right? 6 cities of refuge. Lasad Lovo, there can be 9. That means if there's going to be 9, that means people are going to still kill inadvertently, right? But if there's no Yetzirah, if the evil inclination at the end of time is going to be destroyed, what do you need in the Ir Miklot? You don't need the Ir Miklot for Kapara. So the Karbonos that will be brought, we won't need. The Chatos that will be brought is from Chatos from the previous life, right? Before resurrection. People sinned, right? No, the Gemara says Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel, he manipulated the wick. He recorded in his personal diary, Shibon Beis Hamikdash, Avi Chato Shmeina. He's going to bring the fat sin offering, right? Shibon Beis Hamikdash. That's what he recorded. He lived there. He was after the Churban Abayis. Okay, Meheri Bar Beis Hamikdash. But if there's no Yetzirah over here, Meheri Bar Beis. Therefore, you have to be concerned. If a woman would want to commit adultery, she'll be found guilty when you have the date of the document. I mean, a woman's going to commit adultery after Bias Mashiach. It's a tough one to say. Inami, Shloyom Zinsa Achagershin, Vyazireno. So you shouldn't say that she committed, of a woman who becomes adulterous, the husband's not permitted to take her back, correct? So what's the husband do? We'll give her a get. And he'll say, she had an illicit relation after he divorced her. And then afterwards he'll remarry her. That's what he'll do. But factually, she committed adultery when he was married to her. So by having the date, it will prevent this situation where a husband will be able to claim that he divorced her, because the halach is if a woman has an illicit relationship after she's divorced, the husband's permitted to remarry her. A woman who's divorced and she commits what kind of relationship she has, the original husband is permitted to remarry her and to be with her.
But not if she was married.
Not if she's married, then she's an adulteress.
No. I mean, a man divorces a woman, she remarries, she gets divorced.
No, that is not, cannot. That's Masu Grushoso.
Yeah, but having relations with another man out of wedlock.
Correct.
Could take her back.
Correct. Okay, further. Itmar.
This answer about the mamzer, it would have certainly applied at the time they were making the tafan. I mean, they narrowed it down to the uncle and his niece, but it has to do as well. I mean, it seems that the mamzer's answer would have been very relevant to them too at that time.
Sure.
They didn't mention it.
No, that was my difficulty on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish rejected Rabbi Yochanan's position of Znus Shemechapa Basachosa, which was the death penalty. Firstly, I mean, he says it's remote. We don't have to enact the law for something that is remote. So says it's not remote. So says, as I said, it's to put it to death is remote. But Mamzerim is not so remote, right? We're saying. And Tosa said specifically, so if that's the case. What? Tosa. No, it's not. How do you explain Reish Lakish? Right, because Tosa showed we are concerned about adultery. It's not that remote. Why does a virgin get married on Wednesday? So if the husband finds her not to be a virgin, Thursday morning comes to court right away to lodge his complaint, because otherwise he'll be living with an adulteress for the rest of his life. But if it's something which is so remote, and it's a Mishnah, why be concerned? So therefore, Tos's answer was speaking with the death penalty. But if we're concerned about mamzerim, some say mamzerim evidently is not enough of a reason. It's not enough of a reason.
In Israel, there were many mamzerim. It was a whole business of sorting.
That's something. That's a different reason, because the Jews in Bavel, they weren't careful. So therefore, he brought them back, because if he would leave them there and there'd be no one to oversee the community, it would be disastrous. Right? That's why. Again,
Separate them.
yeah, but we're not going to allow a situation to evolve again to have more mamzerim. Right? We have a problem. You have a mamzer problem.
Yeah.
Do you want more? Of course you're not.
Right, so you're saying, according to Rish Lakish, Eros, monetary issue is more important than
No. He holds one's less common than the other. So, I agree with you. It's difficult. If mamzer is an issue, so why don't Rish Lakish say mishum mamzeris? You know, the Ramban writes that during Bai Sheni we had no revealed miracles. The only revealed miracle in Bai Sheni was what was Ner Hanukkah. But there's one revealed miracle that was always in place, Mei Sota. That if a woman would commit adultery and she'd undergo the ritual of the Sota, she would die, which would clearly confirm that she committed adultery. And the adulterer would die. It's an Ezgolui. So you see, even during Bai Sheni, so the Ramban writes to maintain the purity of Klal Yisrael, that there shouldn't be this illegitimacy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though at that time we weren't at the level that we're worthy of this level of miracle, that remained in place for the sake of to maintain the purity of Klal Yisrael. This is the Ramban. Itmar. We'd learned, Meima Saimonim Luget. When a woman's divorced, you have to wait 3 months for Havchana to determine when is she permitted to remarry. So is it when the woman is divorced, which makes sense, when she's divorced, and then we know the husband definitely didn't cohabit with her. Ravam and Mishas Nesino. Rav says when she receives the get. That's when the clock starts ticking. Right? She's divorced, so we know they've been separated 3 months. Now she has a child. We know the child was from the second husband, not the first husband. Shmuel Amar Mishas Ksiva, when it's written. So therefore, whenever you find that date in the get, you start counting the 3 months.
This could be a problem from kids from the war, according to Shmuel, in those days especially.
Yeah. So, see, it's not such a problem because the husband's not here. They've been separated. Really, the case of the get, these kinds of situations, we have a principle known as lo plug. Do we say lo plug? Don't we say lo plug? We don't want to make any differentiations. Do we say, but factually, they haven't been divorced for 3 months. So therefore, we'll say, even though they weren't together, right, it's irrelevant. I'll give you a case. A woman is beyond menopause, many years. She has to wait 3 months before she remarries, right? She's widowed. She's 80 years old, she's widowed. She's not permitted to remarry, she has to wait 3 months. What's the problem? There are no children involved. But we don't make differentiations. So maybe over here also. Since factually, halachically, he could have been with her, we wait 3 months. Even though he's overseas, she's here, it's irrelevant. That's really the machlokus, whether it's Mishas Nesina, is it when she's actually, the marriage is terminated, or no? Once the get is written, the date in the get, that already tells us it's not a problem.
But Shmuel agrees that the divorce is effective upon the giving.
No question. Nobody disagrees, definitely.
It just starts the clock.
Right, the clock starts ticking earlier. Shmuel Amar Mishas Ksiva. Maskler Rav Noson bar Oshia the Shmuel. So Rav Noson bar Oshia asks, according to the position, Yomesh de Noshim Chotzerachas. You have 2 women married to 1 man, and he writes one get with an earlier date, and he writes a second get with a later date. Zu Asur Zu Materis. 1 woman, she has to wait an additional month. Rashi says there's a month apart. So 1 wife is permitted to marry a month earlier than the other. One is not permitted to marry, the other one's permitted to marry. It seems to be unusual. It doesn't make any sense. both women are married to the same man, and he divorced them, and the divorce took place at the same time, right? Yet the halacha is one is permitted to marry a month earlier than the other. It's peculiar. No, it's not so unusual. If people look at the document, they'll understand why. Because the moment the get is written, the man is not, we're going to see in a moment, there's something known as rabbinically a get yosham. Get yosham means, what happens if a person writes a get, and after he has the get written, he sequesters himself with his wife for a period of time that he could have had relations with her. Rabbinically, we invalidate the get. It's called get yosham. Why? Because people will say that the children that she had are not legitimate, even though the get was given later. In fact, she conceived, she was still married, but if people will look at the get, what are they going to say? The date of the get was prior. As a result of that, the children were born out of wedlock. So it's a disgrace for the children. Therefore, rabbinically, we say that get cannot be used. See here also. So, once the get is written and dated, the husband will not seclude himself with his wife. So therefore, one get, he didn't have relations with. Even though halachically he's permitted, right? So therefore, to have relations with her. Even though the get's written, he's permitted to have relations. He didn't divorce her. He didn't divorce her yet, right? But the answer is he won't. Because he goes, even if he secludes himself with her, the get is invalidated.
Right, he can have relations, but then the get...
So therefore, people, like looking at the date, they'll understand why the date that has the date a month earlier, why that get, she's permitted to get married a month earlier, because factually he wasn't involved with her for 3 months, right? And the other woman, because the date is a month later, so that first month he could have been with her, okay? Tanya Kavasi de Rav. We have a brisa supporting Rav's position that you start counting, the clock ticks from the time the divorce takes place. That's Mishas Nesina. Tanya Kavasi de Shmuel. We have a brisa which supports Shmuel that it's Mishas Ksiva. Tanya Kavasi de Rav. The brisa which supports Rav. Hasholech get liishto. Here, a person sends a get through an agent. V'nishta shaliach b'derech gimel chodoshim. And the agent was waylaid for 3 months on the route. Shegia get liyoda tzricha l'hamtin gimel chodoshim. When eventually she receives the get, to remarry she has to wait 3 months from the time she receives the get. Although the get was sent 6 months earlier, she has to wait 3 months before she's permitted to remarry. So what do we see that? So we see from there that it's Mishas Nesina. It's when she's divorced. U'leget yoshen echoshim, and we're not concerned that during this period of time it should be a get yoshen. Why? Sharei lo nisyach. Factually, the husband did not seclude himself with his wife. So there's not a question that people are going to say that the children themselves were born out of wedlock. So it's interesting. I mean, what does Rav say what he says? If actually he didn't sequester himself with his wife, so Rav should be in agreement. So it's interesting to us here. The Gemara asked on Shmuel, it's going to be peculiar. You have 2 women, they both are divorced at the same time from the same husband. One could marry a month earlier than the other, right? So people say that doesn't make any sense. It seems the whole thing is a joke. If we're concerned, so why could one wife remarry a month earlier than the other? It's what we call chuchel l'tlula. The whole thing is nonsense. So Rabbi Shabai answered that because if people would look at the document, you see the date, one date is a month earlier than the other date, right? The question is, but Rav Nosson Bar Osha asked the question to Shmuel, but do people look at the date? If people don't look at the date, they say it looks peculiar. So take a look at Tosa says that's the position of Rav. Why does Rav say b'shas nesina? Because of this peculiarity that people will say you can have 2 women being divorced simultaneously, and yet one wife could remarry a month before the other. Meaning Abayi's answer is not sufficient for Rav. It looks nonsensical. That's the reason why he says it's Mishas Nasina. That's why Rav says this. So it's not because it's a low plug. Not because it's a low plug. Take a look at Tosus. Pirish api shetzrichen lam shloshe chodoshim. Lab mishum b'chayshinu shem betoch kach yovo leo. Do leget yoshem nichoshim. It says explicitly in the Brisa. Right? The get is valid, but yet despite that, she still has to wait 3 months. So what do you have to wait 3 months? It seems to be contradictory. If get Yoshem, we're not concerned that he may have had relations with her. After the get was written, so if that's the case, let the clock should start ticking from when the get was sent. So why only after she's divorced they have to wait? Does the clock start ticking? 3 months? That's what Tosas is addressing. So Tosas, and people won't look at the date. So if a person doesn't look at the date, they say the whole thing doesn't make any sense. That's the machlokas Rav and Shmuel. How, right, will people, will they be aware or will they not be aware? That's the argument. You know, the Gemara says in Shabbos, you know, there's an expression in English, a little knowledge is dangerous. The Gemara says that one of the Gemara gave a certain psak, and they asked him why. He didn't want to offer the reason. Because since they themselves didn't have the ability to really fully grasp it, you know, he said, Rabbi, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense what you're saying. That's the halacha. You know, it's interesting. There's a famous word from Rabbi Gitten, Zechariah Nevrocho, that the Ramban writes at Kabbalah Satorah, there were kolos abrok, there was lightning and thunder and fire and everything. And there was a level of fear that they were trembling. And this is when they heard the Aseres Adibros. So what should the Aseres Adibros contain? Rational laws or statutes which are not rational? See, it should be things that you don't understand. But yet, the laws in the Aseres Adibros are rational laws. Lo tirtzach, lo sinov, lo sachmod. Don't swear falsely in God's name. Kibbur aveim, observing. These are rational laws. They will make sense. It should say paraduma, shatnez, kashrus. Right? Well, these are all statutes. So this will be, it steals such a level of reverence and fear, they'll accept you regardless. That was Rav Gifter's question. It's a good thing if Howard would have known this last week, he would have said it over to Bar Mitzvah. Okay, so Rav Gifter said something phenomenal. He said, something that a person doesn't understand, we accept. What we believe that we do understand, then we have something to say about it. What's murder? Abortion, is that murder? That's the question. Well, I think it's not. Of course, it's not a full life, or whatever it is. Everybody has what to say. Paraduma, people, do you understand the inner workings? We don't. It's beyond my grasp. I accept it. So therefore, it was only the rationalists were at Sinai, because only through the trepidation and the fear and everything and the reverence, that's the reason why they embraced it, without question. Okay? So this is the Brisa which supports Rav. Tanya Kavos is Shmuel. We have Brisa which supports Shmuel. You know, normally we have a principle in Shas. Whenever there's Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, Halacha Karav Bisuri and Kashmuel Bedini. If it's monetary, we rule like Shmuel. If it's question of permitted, not permitted, we rule like Rav. So in this argument, how should we rule? We should rule like Rav. It's from Mishas Nasid, but we'll see in a moment. We rule like Shmuel. And we have a Brisa which supports each of them. No, Shmuel is more lenient.
Okay, it's a transaction.
It's not. It's a doc. It's a question when, from when. No. But according to Rabbi Yochanan. No, here we're talking about something else. Right, according to Rabbi Yochanan.
The question is, what happens in this? When does it? If you start the clock running.
No, but everybody agreed. But everybody agreed earlier that even if Reish Lakish agrees that if it's sent long distance, it's Mishas Nesina. It's not Mishas Ksiva.
Still a financial relationship.
No, it has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Financially, he's lost his rights. And no, financially, everybody agrees. The Gemara says when you send it long distance, it's when she's divorced. That's when he loses his rights. We'll see in a moment. Tanya goes to Shmuel because really, if we're saying what is the basis for Rav, because people will look at it peculiarly. They'll say it doesn't make sense. Both women are divorced the same moment, right? And yet one has to wait only 2 months, the other one waits 3 months. People will say it doesn't make sense. But Rabbi answered, right? He responded to Rabbi. If people look in the document, they'll see the difference. So over here, Rav's position is a weak position because Abayi's response is a valid response. Just look in the document, you'll see why. Well, we never know. Instead, for that, we don't rule like Rav. A person that gives a get to a third party, right? He puts a get in an escrow, and he says, don't give it to my wife until 3 months pass. From the moment he gives it to her, she's permitted to marry immediately. Why? Because from the time that it was written, 3 months have passed. But factually, if he wasn't divorced from her, what about get Yoshan? We're not concerned. Because factually, he did not seclude himself with her. So Tosaf here says something interesting. Before, there's a chiddush and here there's a chiddush. Before we spoke about the get was sent long distance to his wife, I mean they're not in the same community. So despite the fact they're not in the same community, the Bryce said before, when does the clock start ticking? From when she receives it. Mm-hmm. Here they're in the same community, right? He's only giving it to a third party. He says when 3 months pass, give it to her. Even though in the same party, in the same community, we say she's permitted to remarry immediately.
She's there when
She doesn't have to be there. It doesn't make a difference. So Tosafos says, Pirsh Punchis V'Sholach Ledarko. Rashi learns that he went out of town after he gave it to the third party. Ubechinam Pirush came. So Tosafos says Rashi didn't have to say that. He could be in the community. Elamayri Afilu Hu Be'ir. V'Nokarai Braisa Hamashal to Rebusa. The chiddush is what's the chiddush that he gave it to put it in the escrow for 3 months. The Api Shu Be'ir, although he's local. Muteres Linosim Yad. When 3 months pass, she's permitted to marry immediately. Ve'choshen Leget Yosha. And we're not concerned he may have secluded himself with her. Why should we suspect it? No, unless you... So what? Doesn't make a difference. There's no reason. If he wrote, he did it. The man doesn't want to get Yosha. So the presumption he didn't. So that's a chiddush. Immediately. You never know. Maybe they got together and we're not aware of it. You don't have to be concerned about that.
As long as you know he was out of town.
No. Tosa learned he was in town. Even if he was in town.
As long as you know that they weren't together.
They weren't together. Because again, the whole idea to get Yosha, it's not such a terrible thing. If a child's born out of wedlock, he's still a kosher Jew. Right? Let's say they did have relations. They were together. And the child was conceived after the get. It's not the end of the world. Right? So therefore, in our situation where we don't know, there's no reason to suspect that they weren't together. The Brisa says she can get married immediately. So that's a chiddush. Even though maybe we should be concerned, we're not concerned. So you're asking, but you never know. Okay, it's not at the end of the world. We're not talking about illegitimacy here. We're talking about what people may say. People are not going to say it. We said even when you send the get long distance, and the shlich gets way late for 3 months, when she receives it, the clock starts ticking from the time she receives it. The Avapi right? The husband and the wife are not in the same community. So each brisa says it's chiddush. Regarding marrying immediately, although they are in the same community, and over there, although he was way late, and the husband and wife are 2 separate communities, when she permitted, from the time she receives it, she has to wait 3 months before she marries.
So they're contradictory.
No, each brisa is a different brisa.
What's the reason?
One supports Rav, one supports Shmuel. We're saying
I'm saying they're contradictory. You can't. They're irreconcilable.
of course not. It's 2 different opinions.
Yeah, you can't.
We're saying Shmuel is according to one, has one, and then Rav is the other. So that what's the halacha? So the Gemara concludes. Where is it? Yeah. Rav Kana, Rav Popi, Rav Ashi, Rav Kana, Rav Popi, Rav Ashi, Avdi, Mishas Ksiva. They conducted themselves that she's permitted to remarry from the date that it's dated, not from when it's given, which is Shmuel. Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Brei Rav Shua, Avdi, Bishas Nasina. They conduct themselves that when is she permitted, when does the clock start ticking? When she's actually divorced. So that means the first group follows the position of Shmuel, the second group follows the position of Rav. The Hilchsa, Bishas Ksiva. The halacha is she's permitted to marry. What? Once she gets the get, she can marry immediately, if 3 months had passed.
Isn't this a little unusual? The way this is sort of like Hilchsa, Ksiva. There's no argument.
There is no argument. There is no argument. No, there is.
They just state the two different opinions, and then they say, okay,
No.
Hilchsa, Ksiva.
He's telling what the halacha was. So now the question is why. That's why I'm addressing this. Especially we always rule like Rav. Rav and Shmuel, halacha Rav Visuri. When does she permit? So I'm explaining to you, because really the basis for the concern is a weak basis over here. Right? It looks peculiar. Shnei noshim, b'chotzer echod, one's permitted, one's asur, one's muteris. It's not such an issue. Rabbi says, go look at the date, and you'll understand the difference.
So, Rabbi, these rabbis were Kahana, Papi, Ashi.
First, Rav Ashi is a Basra. Rav Ashi is a Basra.
Do we understand? They all lived at the same time, or these different times?
They lived at the same time.
So all the six, on the one side, on the other side, they were all
Correct.
contemporaries.
Yes.
So there were two different schools. You went to this school, and they gave
Not
you
schools.
one.
I mean, they were temporaries. They did
Schools
it.
of thought.
Yes.
They gave you one
But
halakha.
Rav Ashi was the one who actually is Chasim Talmud. Is Rav Ashi. He's the Basra. He's the last one, the last Amoraim. And he's part of the first group who follows Shmuel's position, Rav Ashi. That's the reason why we rule like Rav Ashi's group, not like the second group. But it's still the question, but why doesn't Rav Ashi rule like Rav? Rav Ashi should rule like Rav.
We're talking about just looking at the date. You're saying that just looking at the date, it's simple. But all these, a lot of things you learn, it's not just about, it's the way how people respond to different, how they respond. It's not so simple to look at the date. If it's that simple, every case we've had up to now, it should be simple.
No. To be continued.